Hello, this is Tina Campbell. I'm here from Free Enterprise Warriors, and we're here today to talk to veterans, and this is called Warrior Talk. So I'm really excited today to have Jacy Voglewede with me. She is a veteran. She's a retired major. And that was Air Force, correct, Jacy?
Correct.
And she's also many other things: photographer, mom, wife, all of that combined. And I'm really excited to talk to her about her journey. And so thank you so much for coming on JC with me.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, and we met a few weeks ago, and it was like one of those things, start to hear your story. And I was like, wow, this is very interesting. And I'd love to hear how you got into the military, what your thoughts were when you were growing through that, and how you came out now about a year ago, I believe you said, and you have your own photography studio. And more importantly, how do you go from, military, being a veteran, and then now being an entrepreneur? So that's kind of your journey. So why don't you start telling us about how you ended up joining the military?
Sure, absolutely. I really didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. My dad was a farmer, so I grew up with two entrepreneurial parents. My dad was a farmer, my mom was a hairdresser. And when I was about 13 or 14, my dad took me to an air show in Fargo. And my dad's dream was always to be a pilot. He wanted to fly. So that's why he enjoyed air shows and airplanes and things. So he took me to an air show. And I remember looking across the flight line, and I saw a woman with a braid across her blue hat. And I thought, I'm going to do that someday. And I didn't really know what that meant, but I remember that. I still actually have the air show pamphlet from I'm going to age myself here, 19 something. And anyway, we left the air show, and at 17, I also had a friend, Frank Hassler. He was in the North Dakota Air National Guard, and my mom cut his hair, and he had mentioned how he enjoyed being in the Air National Guard. So I wanted to join active duty Air Force, but my parents were like, that's too big of a step. We don't have anybody in the military. We don't know what the heck we're doing here. Let's start with the Air Guard. And when I was 17, my parents signed the right so that I could join. So I joined at 17. It was the in between break time between December and January when I signed on the dotted line. So then I did drill during my high school senior year. So I drilled, wow. February through May when I graduated from high school, and then I left off for basic training in October. So that's how that's where it all started.
Yep.
And when it really got serious, I think, about wanting to know I wanted to stay in the military was after September 11th. I was working at Microsoft. At the time, it was Microsoft Great Plains Business Solutions. It was before Microsoft had acquired the business. And we were in the hallway when the towers were hit, and we got called to come out and support the unit. And then I got activated with a crew of folks, of course, because we had F-16s on the East Coast at the time. So that's really where my journey started. And when I knew I wanted to stay is after September 11th and at least get my tenure of 20 years in the military.
Yeah. I'm curious because, only because I'm here in New York, and, we just want to say thank you to everybody that around the country who supported, New York, and, obviously, supporting the United States, but, it hit terribly here. We're about 30 miles north of the city. A lot of, knew a lot of people who luckily were able to, walk out, but some people who didn't. And it's interesting, right? That how hard it hit around the nation, and so many young people really did join, not even young people like re-upped and all that, right? In order to support it. So that in itself was incredible. But let me ask you, so were you staying in North Dakota at that time? Did you pretty much just stay there and just were activated?
Yeah, we were activated there to support the East Coast because we had jets on alert there. So we had a whole group of folks there supporting the efforts on the East Coast.
Okay.
And then what happened is I just got on orders and stayed on for a while and recognized, okay, I think I want to do this full time. So then I applied for a full-time job. at the base, and then got on full time. And then once you start full time, it's real hard to leave because the people are incredible. The mission, you know that you're fighting for something bigger than yourself.
Absolutely.
So,
That's
yeah.
cool. And then, so what I know when, so you're with the Air Force, what's that journey like?
Well, for everybody's journey is so different. That's why I think this podcast is cool, because you're going to get so many different stories
Yeah,
and so many different experiences.
I know, I'm so excited.
Yeah, that's so cool. Mine is obviously way different than many of my friends is, even the ones I served right next to. But joining super young like that was my foundational education, like even the basic training and my advanced training immediately after. But my journeys, I stayed enlisted. So in the Air Force, you have enlisted and then officer, and I stayed enlisted for 15 years. Remember that braid I talked about?
Yeah.
That means you're an officer in the Air Force. And so I applied in the Air Force. It's a little bit different. You need to apply for the job, get the job, then you can go get your commission. Whereas what I'm familiar with in the Army Guard, you first go get your commission, then you go find a job. So I had applied for 2 jobs while I was younger. Commissioning was hard to come by in the Air National Guard for the most part. So I applied for those 2, didn't get them. And that had been 15 years, and I was an E7 at the time. So I was a master sergeant. And an opportunity opened up in Bismarck at our headquarters for the North Dakota Air National Guard when I was 34, and had 2 little babies at home. And I was recently married. And I said to my husband, should we do this? Should I apply? And he's like, well, we can always turn it down. So apply for the job. So I applied, got the position, and left for officer training when I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old.
And how long is officer training?
That was 7 weeks for officer training, came home, and then I went off to my advanced training. So my husband was a single dad for quite some time when those kiddos were just little. I have a cute story before I left my, I'm going to cry. My goodness, you're getting all the feels.
That's okay.
I did some videos, like reading books to my kids, and
Oh, wow.
the kids have stories now. Like my older one remembers Cooper, the young one, kissing the TV screen and like hugging it, whatever. And Cooper once said to my husband, is mom ever coming home? So yeah. And then I commissioned in 2011, and I ended up making it to the rank of major before retiring, with 26 years of military service and 20 years and 18 days of active duty.
Wow.
Yeah.
But also, what it shows me is that, it's I don't wherewithal, I don't know what the word is right now, but the fact that it's like, it's not just you, it's your family, right? So the military families are all invested in what's happening with the person in, with the service person.
For sure.
And it's like, it's incredible, like that he said, yeah, definitely, go do what you got to do, and I'll take care of the kids. And I'm sure he has a job, and it was, and it's about support. So I think, it's kudos to him.
Yeah, for sure.
For giving you, the opportunity, helping you get that opportunity. But also the fact that, I know, after I went back to work after my first daughter, it ended up being 6 weeks because it was really prior to, the parents' rights that we have now. That was like, you're expected back at 6 weeks. I remembered I was just crying. I was devastated, like to give my baby up to just, for the day, not just for however many weeks or months that you're doing it, but just for the day to daycare, was just hard enough. So I can only appreciate that it must have been incredibly, and appreciate what other mothers do who are in the service.
Yeah. And when we, not only did I go away to officer training, we moved to a new city. We went from Fargo to Bismarck. So new house, new city, new daycares. And at the time, they were 1 and 3. So he had 2 separate daycares because we couldn't find a daycare with 2 openings. Wow. And he had a new job. So kudos to him. He had a lot on his shoulders.
Like to meet him someday.
Yes, for sure.
But so now, you're going through your 20 plus years, that you've had now. what was the thought? Was it scary when you decided to get out and become, from military service into being a veteran? Like, is it scary?
Yeah, I would say that if like joining at 17, that's all I knew. So like the next step was like, oh my gosh, how do I just be, I mean, I still was in the guard. So I had, I had my weekends off and I was full time, but like down to the clothes you wear, didn't have a big wardrobe because I wore my uniform 90% of the time. So it was very scary for me. And also going from a salaried position to owning my own business. I did photography my whole life. My mom was a photographer when I was in high school. So that's where I kind of picked up the hobby, the habit. And then through college, a little bit, I played with it. And then after I had my kids, I started a sole proprietor business. Like I just registered my company name as a sole proprietor and did just a little bit of work. But I was like, I can do this full time. I can make this happen. Even though it's very scary because you don't have that steady income to rely on. So right a year prior to retiring, I reached out to some local business folks and said, what do I need to do to make this more legit? So we reformed it as an LLC and going through all the steps of doing all that to get my business on the up and up and make sure that I was ready for the next steps.
But I think that's really important what you said, that yes, you have a talent, a skill, and a passion for something, but now how do you make that into a business?
Right.
And I think you and I were talking about this a little bit, and you were saying that it's hard because there's not a lot of information, right? You said there's not a lot of like aggregated information.
Right. And I would say like it's all out. There's a lot of it, but it's a lot. And like when I would call people and say, okay, what do I do next? I'm like, well, what do you need? I don't know what I need.
I don't know what I don't know.
Yeah, I need you to help me. Like, where's the checklist for this? I'm used to technical orders that tell me exactly how to do my job. And I'm used to checklists and things like that. So that's probably been the hardest part, is not knowing. Yeah. And when you call somebody to say what's next and they're like, what do you need? But
yeah, and I think that's where, so that's what I'm interested in as far as helping, veterans to start businesses, is first you do have to find out where they're at, where are you? And then it's plugging into, as you said, almost, and a checklist is a great idea to just make sure they're covering the bases.
Right.
But, one of the things, like what other things did you find like that, skills or talents that you had to find from inside that had to be an entrepreneur? Like what? Yeah. Because I can imagine that in the service that you're you're very regimented, for instance, and now you know where you're supposed to be, maybe 9 to 5 or whatever hours that you keep. What's it like when you don't have a schedule?
Well, I really struggled with that at the beginning because it went from exactly like you said. I had my regimented days, 7:30 to 4 or whatever. And now I have all this time. So I sometimes catch myself going, what do I do? I have all this time. And then I do nothing because I'm not sure what to do. And it's kind of a vicious little cycle. So like time blocking has been very good for me. I've gotten really good at trying to figure out how to plug things into certain time blocks. I don't know, is it the Pomodoro method where it's 25 minutes
15.
on?
Oh yeah, I thought it was, yes. Yeah, you're right. It's 25, 5 minutes off. Yeah.
Yeah, I do that a lot. And that seems to be really helpful.
Yeah.
But the military taught me a lot of things that I think I'm blessed because I wouldn't have gotten it otherwise. Like how to take constructive criticism. Shoot, I learned that early because I screwed up.
At 17.
I screwed up a lot. So I feel like I'm better at taking constructive criticism now because of that. Of course, the regimented stuff, that's all good, but really learning how to dig your heels in and get to work. That's something that you just had to do. And now it's carried with me. So I'm really blessed. I think growing up in an entrepreneurial home, my parents are both entrepreneurs. Yeah. When I was 12, I started a fishing lure business. It only lasted a couple of years, but how cool is that? JJ's Rigs is no longer in business.
But say, what's the name of it again?
JJ's Rigs. My middle name is Joe. So Jacy Joe.
That's awesome. So talk about that a little bit. So here you were, did you say 12?
12 years old. Yeah.
12 years old. And so you want to make money for whatever reason, you want something, or you just
Yep.
want to see what this is like, or you're doing something so well, somebody's like, you get paid for that.
Right.
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 And so, I mean, a couple of years, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a class in Jamestown through the NDSU Extension Service, North Dakota State, and it was called Build Your Own Business and Be Your Own Boss. And I saw it advertised, and I told my parents I want to take this. And so I went to the class, and then I was like, I don't know what I want to do for a business, And then my aunt and uncle are avid fishermen, and they said, well, we can't find spinners, fishing lures that are long enough. They're all too short, or they're all way too long. There's nothing in the middle. There's no customized ones. So I'm like, all right, I like to fish. I can do this.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
But see,
Identify the need and satisfy it, right?
so I was just gonna say, yeah. So you just knew. So honestly, you could tell, right, from your growing up, that you were seeing what your parents were doing, right? And boy, do we have to watch what we say and do in front of our kids, because they are watching us, right? By the way, some of that, just to mention, with those difficult economic times, I want to really mention to people that the kids are watching, and the kids could be like mine in their 20s. They're still watching how we're handling everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to kind of put that in people's heads, because it's something that I noticed during, I've always noticed, but certainly during the pandemic. What I told my 20-something kids was that I said, there's two things you can control. It's your attitude and your actions. That's all you can control.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's, I think, we have to understand as parents that we have to kind of instill that. It's like your mindset. And, but I love the fact that your folks instilled an entrepreneurial mindset. The fact that at 12 years old, you're going to go take a course on starting your own business. Were you the youngest, or was this all kind of kids your age at that extension?
I believe it went up to 16. So I was probably the youngest at the time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's like, so you have that, you go into now very young, like you said, so you were kind of formed, you didn't have any kind of pre, you know, pre-formation or whatever, but of your personality and all these things. Because 17, you're kind of like a sponge.
Yep.
Right. Sure. What was it like also being a woman?
I had a really good, I think, compared to some. There are a handful of not a handful. There are a couple of things that happened in my career that I wonder if I wasn't, 2 times that I wonder if things would have been different.
Yeah.
Very, very early on. And I was young too. So maybe it was because I was the youngest, not just because I was a woman. Like that happened early on, where on drill weekends, I was the one cleaning and tidying up while everyone else was launching and recovering aircraft. So I wonder if I had been able to actually use my skills instead of be doing the woman stuff. Because I switched jobs because of that experience, because I wasn't getting hands-on experience on the mission. So I switched jobs, and that changed my career trajectory, But for the most part, I was really, really blessed to be treated the same as everyone else, and men respected me, I believe, for the most part. And I had a great relationship with all the men that I worked with.
Wonderful. So, and just, but last but not least, talk about what your business means to you now. Talk about like, what are you doing with photography? How is this branching out?
It's so exciting. There's so many things that I didn't realize you could do. Like I would catch myself, like I can just go do this. I don't have to ask permission. You mean I don't have to sign a form? I don't have to sign a waiver.
Maybe you have to get them to sign the form, right?
Yeah, right. And when I'm dealing with government agencies now, I get so frustrated because I'm like, let's just do this already.
Yeah.
So yeah, I back in the day when I was doing photography under my sole proprietor business, I was mainly families and kids and high school seniors. What I've niched off and doing right now is personal branding. So I'm helping small businesses elevate their online presence, which it's magic. It's magic to take somebody who has just okay imagery on their website and their social media platforms and up level that, showing people exactly what you do, how you do it, when you do it, and who you do it with.
Yeah.
So it's really been an incredible journey. I have a mentor on the East Coast. I found her about 2 years ago, and she's a culinary photographer. I liked her work, so I reached out and
That
said,
must
can
be
we be
amazing.
friends? Yep. And we still work together today. And so, yeah, I just feel like it's been an amazing journey. I'm excited to work with small businesses. I love working with veteran-owned businesses as well.
Mhm.
I have so much to learn, like so much yet to learn. But I'm like a sponge. I probably jump on too many webinars and too many trainings and that sort of thing. But I can, like, if I quickly recognize that it's not for me.
Right, you're back, yeah, you're backing off. But something you said there about, and I want to make sure everybody heard it, and that's you saw something in your mentor that you were like, I want to work with this person. You reached out and said, can we get connected?
Mhm.
And what's amazing is that, so that's what we talk about a lot, or I talk about with a lot of the people that I work with, and that's proximity,
Mhm.
right? Sometimes you have to, like, even, go find somebody on LinkedIn, and you just have to start like commenting a little bit, not stalking them, but, being like commenting, appropriately, and, saying, could I speak with you? I just want to set up a time, and trying to make that connection with this person that's almost like on a list. If you could keep a list of like the 10 top people you'd like to, and like to be connected with. And what's amazing, it's almost like you're putting it out to the universe, right? It's like, can you imagine if you hadn't asked, right? And all you had to do was say, like, listen, love your work. I like what you're doing. I would just like to talk with you.
Right.
You're
Right.
not expecting anything. I'm sure you were not expecting anything.
No, I was like, if she calls me, I'll be lucky just to talk to her because her work's incredible.
Right. So
Mhm.
now it's beyond that. It's actually changed the trajectory of what you're doing, because you
Yeah.
went from like kind of photography studio to now branding online. And that is also, I believe, across the world. You could do it, right?
Yes. And she just picked up a cookbook. She just signed a deal today for a cookbook. So she's going to have me travel out to the East Coast and help her shoot the food because we work so much better together than alone.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So, have brand will travel.
You got it. Or you have goods, send them to me. I'll photograph for them for you and make them look incredible. And I'll send you the images back.
Now that's very interesting. So I think that's something that I guess we didn't really talk about when we met the last time, but that's why this is so important, is to have these discussions, talk to people, be real. I'm not saying you are real, but I'm saying to everybody else, be real, be authentic,
Mhm.
find out what you want to do based on what other people are doing. Oh, that's interesting. I never thought I could do something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's the coolest. But proximity, sometimes you have to, you can't think, oh, this person doesn't want to talk to me, right? You have to get out of your head, out of your limiting belief
Yeah.
that someone, why would they want to talk to me, kind of thing, right?
For sure. For
So,
sure.
so if you could give, and we'll, absolutely, in the, the podcast notes and things like this, we'll be able to put your contact information if somebody wants to. Would you like to give a, number one, would you like to give an email address that people could contact you with?
For sure. It's hello, HELLO at JACYJO.com.
Awesome.
Easy
So,
peasy.
and also, would you like to give, if you were talking right now with a veteran who's thinking about now, starting their own business, or, doing something that they're passionate about, any words of advice, if you could, or even tell yourself a few years ago?
Right, right. Well, I think my best trait that's helped me get this far is my persistence. Like picking up the phone and just calling people, not worrying about what they're going to say. Now, I've met a lot of mentors that way, just by calling and saying, can we have coffee, or can we have virtual coffee? I do virtual coffee like this a lot.
Yeah.
So, that would be probably my biggest piece of advice.
So put yourself out there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And
And don't be scared of
scared.
the criticism. Like,
Yeah. But like
everybody's
you
going to
said,
criticize.
but you said that actually being in, in service, that you learned to not, worry about, what people think, because you are quite often getting kind
Yeah,
of told what to do. So asking people for help may not be such a negative as they think.
for sure. For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you. I really appreciate you spending time with me. I just think that this kind of information, you never know where this will help someone else.
Right. Right.
Right.
Well, I
And that's,
appreciate it, Tina. This is great.
yeah. And not only that, but if somebody has an issue where they would like to talk to you about branding, about photography, about starting a business, they can contact you at that email address, correct?
For sure.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. Hopefully this was helpful, and that's what we look to promote. And we'll be here for some interesting stories as we kind of go along this journey that I'm taking to find more and more veterans that we can learn about, find out about, connect with, and hopefully grow their businesses. That's my mission. But anyway, thanks, JC. Really appreciate you.
Thank
Okay.
you so much.
Okay, thanks.